Aaron Torres joining us, our Friday friend from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, Fox Sports Radio, Kentucky Sports Radio, and owner of one of the premier way too early preseason college basketball polls in the country. And the Hogs actually quoted you on you picking them number 19 in the way too early preseason poll. But you had a lot of Razorback fans in your mentions, didn't you, AT? Because they probably thought the Hogs should be, number one next year.
Yeah, Phil, I made the executive decision. From now on, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to rank Arkansas number one and deal with the wrath of the 350-plus other fan bases. Let them just get in my mentions, because I think it would have been less of an S-storm. But, no, it was all in good fun, and I think most Arkansas fans know, I will say it was funny, and it proves beyond a reasonable doubt that some people are just clinically insane, which is not a bad thing, whatever. My wife works in the mental health field. But I had of course you picked Arkansas 19, you hate us. And I'm like, you can call me a lot of things. I don't think Razorback hater is one of them. But, obviously when the poll came out, it was Monday night, right after the championship game. And, Arkansas at the time really had, 5 players that I think we feel will definitively be on the roster next year. I don't even think 5, you could say. Devo, Jalen Williams, KK Robinson, who's coming off surgery. At the time, Audi's Tony was committed, and, I think, J.D. Note will come back, but I've heard he may at least look into professional options as a fifth-year college player, whatever. So, the idea that it was criminal to put Arkansas at number 19 when I'm not even positive you can fill out a starting lineup, I didn't think it was that ridiculous, but, the fans were in good fun, and I think a lot of them understood it's an early poll. We all, as the media, like to do it, have to do it. And obviously it goes without saying, after the week that Arkansas has had with Stanley Amude and Chris Likes being added to the roster, they will be moving up. And we'll see where they end up when all the, the deck chairs get reshuffled. But obviously a great week for Arkansas. Post-Torres top 25, yes, they will be moving up my poll with the recent addition.
Well, and what's obvious to stand out here is you've added some explosive scores to the backcourt, and you did that with Tony, but now with Likes and with Amude, Amude and Tony, maybe, and I haven't watched Amude play, but knowing he's 6'6", and the way that Muss described Tony as a little bit of a positionless player. I know Likes is shorter, so he's not quite like that, but you get a couple of the big guards that will be able to guard, other big guards and small forwards. And a guy who seems to be like a walking bucket sometimes and Likes. This is really exciting this last week.
Well, it is. And, one, it speaks to the new age of college basketball recruiting, which I'm sure you guys have talked about for weeks at a time now. But I think what it also speaks to is, you bring in grown men into this program, it completely changes things, and it's funny, of course, Arkansas fans are riding high right now, as they should be. But, I think a program like the University of Kentucky, I look at them, and I think it's going to be really interesting. Do they still continue to recruit high school players? Because you might have the quote-unquote NBA prospect, but when he's going up against a grown man like Stanley Amude, who's played college basketball for 4 years, he's 220 pounds of pure muscle. I don't know his exact age, but I'm guessing he'll be 22 by the time he takes the court. It's just fascinating how quickly this thing changed. But, I think, watching Baylor win the national championship this past week, obviously you look at most of the teams that have had success in this tournament, whether it's Michigan, a very physical team, whether it's, Arkansas, for the most part, older veteran team, Houston, on and on and on. Those are the teams that were competing and winning, and I think this is the way you have to recruit in 2021. I really do.
All right, I got one last thing before handing it over to SmackDown here, and there've been I think a lot of people in Arkansas are just nervous that that it's tough to hold on to a good thing, and that Muss is going to leave for somewhere out west or some big name program that's looking for a coach. Didn't happen with Indiana, didn't happen with Texas, didn't happen with North Carolina. It's not going to happen with Arizona, and it's more because Muss wants to be here. I think. Is what it's more about. I thought North Carolina was going to look for a Carolina guy. They did. Indiana did the same thing. Texas sort of did the same thing. I don't know anybody right now that I wouldn't want to jump into Arizona. I think Muss is a long-timer here. It's not to say this is where he's going to finish his career, but he ain't leaving anytime soon.
Well, and it goes to what the three of us have talked about for years now is, Look, I think, and we can all be honest here, because Arkansas has not had a ton of success prior to Eric Musselman's arrival, I think it's kind of easy to overlook how great the program is. But more than that, what the program provides him, and, he's talked about since the day he got there, being the not only the flagship university of the state, but being the professional sports team of the state, the coverage that he gets, the passion that the fan base has, and the fact that, let's be honest, financially, there isn't a single thing that, whether it's his pay, his assistant's pay, facilities, resources, there isn't a thing that he's going to go to Hunter Yurachek asking for, especially when he's winning, that he's not going to be able to get, And so, I think that's where, I'll even go, let's skip Arizona because they're in major sanctions. They, Muss has a $5 million buyout, whatever. But even Indiana, I think Indiana's a great job. I think it's probably better, again, than people realize for the same reason as Arkansas. I don't think people realize how crazy that fan base is because they haven't had much success of late. But, what does Indiana really offer that Arkansas doesn't, other than a few more banners in their arena, which banners, by the way, that were accumulated before most of us were even born in the 40s, 50s, 60s, whatever. Indiana financially can't offer more money. They can't offer better assistant pay. They can't offer better facilities. They can't offer better anything. And, oh, by the way, let's be honest, the Big Ten's a bear right now, where the SEC, there's a lot of wins to be had at the middle and the bottom of the league. So, to me, Phil, I'm with you. This was a great cycle for Arkansas fans because, again, if Arizona, Texas, North Carolina, and Indiana open up, you're never going to have an offseason where more marquee jobs open up and Eric Musselman sticks around. So it was a positive sign. But, again, it goes back to what you said, Phil. What can an Indiana or anybody offer that Arkansas can't match or exceed?
Aaron Torres joining us here on Halftime. AT, want to keep it with Arizona for a second before we jump around college basketball. What did you make of Arizona ultimately deciding to let go of Archie Miller, and for a guy that's had some of these NCAA sanctions be coming down with him? I believe he was involved with the FBI investigation, but on the surface, what did you make of Arizona deciding to go with letting him go?
I just thought it was probably the right decision at the wrong time. And my stance has been, I'm not saying you got to keep Sean Miller until the end of time, but at the same time, you spent 4 years basically battling for him legally. You spent millions of dollars in legal fees. And so to me, I don't understand why you're firing him in the middle of an NCAA investigation. Now, there's some speculation that maybe there's a coach that wants the job whose season just ended this week, which, you could probably look at the candidates list and put two and two together, and maybe that's why they waited. But to me, it feels like if you're going to stick with Sean Miller, you might as well let him ride it out through the end of this NCAA investigation. Because let's be honest, the guy I just mentioned, I'll just say it, Tommy Lloyd, the lead assistant at Gonzaga, even if he takes the job, we don't know how good of a coach he is. We don't know how good of a recruiter he is. We don't know how he's going to handle the pressure of one of the 10 biggest jobs in college basketball. And so to me, yes, you're going to get somebody. Obviously, somebody will be coaching the University of Arizona's basketball team next year. But at the same time, that I don't know, man. I'm rambling, but I just think it speaks to exactly what I just said.
Absolutely.
There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. There's a right time and a wrong time. I don't believe a month into the offseason, I don't believe it's fair to the players who have to make a decision on their future. Maybe the new coach isn't even going to want them. The assistant coaches, who it's worth noting, not a single assistant coach currently in the program was there when all this happened. They have no NCAA investigation on their resume. They deserve a fair chance to get on somebody else's staff. And obviously Sean Miller, I know no one feels sympathy for the guy, but let him move on with his life rather than doing his job for a month and a half after the season ends. Because remember, they didn't play in the Pac-12 tournament, so their season ended basically late February, early March. I just didn't like the way it was handled, man. I didn't.
And I realized I was saying the wrong name. It's Sean Miller, not Archie Miller. So forgive me for that right there.
Tough off season for the Miller family.
Yes,
Archie
exactly.
lost his job too, unfortunately. So. Yeah. The nature of the beast, though.
By the way, before we move on, I just saw this notification come across from ESPN. The referee, Bert Smith, that collapsed during the Gonzaga USC game, he's come out and said that he had a blood clot in his lung that caused him to collapse during that game. So, not to change the subject real quick, but I thought that would be worth mentioning to you here real quick. Before we move on, Monday was the national championship game, and obviously we've had some time to kind of slow down with Baylor winning the national championship, just ultimately, in short, destroying Gonzaga in the process. At what point are we going to have this conversation about Gonzaga, like being one of the top teams in college basketball? They had the overall top seed, and I think we might have mentioned it on the show, like if they were ever going to win a national championship, this felt like the year to do it when you didn't have a Duke, Kentucky, North Carolina wasn't what they normally are. Like their path for Gonzaga was there, and they still didn't get the job done. When's it going to come to the point where Mark Few, and we start comparing him to just like he's a great coach, but he can't get over the hump and win the big one?
Well, I think those conversations are already happening, but I would also say that, a couple of things. It cracks me up, this idea of, they need to move to a real conference to prepare them for the NCAA tournament. Well, okay, so let's say they move to the Pac-12. The Pac-12 hasn't had a team play for a national championship since 2006, and they haven't won a championship since Arizona in 1997. So how exactly is that going to prepare Gonzaga? Gonzaga's been in 2 title games, since the Pac-12 has been in one. And what I would also say is just, as somebody who loves this sport, and I'm sure Phil remembers some of these conversations, but like I'm old enough to remember when they said the same thing about Roy Williams. I mean, multiple Final Fours couldn't win the national championship. Jim Boeheim, multiple Final Fours couldn't win the national championship. I'm old enough growing up in Connecticut to remember Jim Calhoun knocking on the door of the Final Four. I think 3 or 4 times before he broke through and won the national championship in '99. So these conversations happen. I would add, too, nobody remembers this, but I think Mike Krzyzewski, Coach K, made at least 3 or 4 Final Fours before he won a national championship. So it's going to happen. They're going to continue to recruit at an insanely high level. And I think just like a Kentucky, just like an Arkansas, just like a Kansas, I think, Gonzaga is going to be a real benefactor of this transfer portal stuff, because I don't know as a high school recruit how you could watch Gonzaga this year and not, or as a player who's in college basketball, not watch Gonzaga this year and say, I want to be a part of that. So I don't think it's slowing down anytime soon. They're going to break through eventually. Does it mean this year? Does it mean next year? I don't know. But if you give me the next 10 years of Gonzaga basketball, considering they've been to 6 straight Sweet 16s and 4 Elite Eights in the past, 6 NCAA tournaments, my hunch is that they eventually break through and do win the national championship.
Aaron, before we let you go, I want you to give me one word that describes the Arkansas Razorback Twitter. I don't know if it stands out from other fan bases, but if you were to use one word that described Razorback Twitter, what would it be?
Well, I could think of 3 or 4 that are all one word. Feisty comes to mind. I would say right now, though, the word that comes to mind is swaggy. I'm not trying to be disrespectful here, but you would think that Arkansas was coming off a national championship season the way that they're acting right now, as far as, just, again, the stuff about how do you have us only ranked 19th? And it's like, with due respect, this was a program that, I remember talking to you guys in early February, let's just get to the NCAA tournament and see what we can do. So it was an incredible run. And I do think, by the way, I will add, I think it's only going to keep going. As you said, Phil, Coach Muss isn't going anywhere. He is the transfer guru. You can love or hate the transfer stuff, but nobody has mastered it more than Arkansas. And for what it's worth, I understand why Arkansas fans are so excited. It's an incredible time for the program. But it is swaggy. It's definitely swaggy right now. And how can you not be? When you have a coach that works as hard to constantly improve his team, upgrade his roster in the offseason. One thing, Phil, that you and I talked about back in the day before, Matt was on part of the show, is that, there did seem to be a little bit of a level of complacency with Mike Anderson, not saying he's a bad guy, nothing like that. You will never use the word complacent when it comes to Eric Musselman, ever. And so I think Arkansas fans, they love their school, they love their state, they love their program, and I think they're just really genuinely excited about having a guy that is putting as much into the program as they do as fans, and I understand the reason for excitement. AT,
you're the man. Appreciate you.
Appreciate it, brother.
I think they're done building next year's roster for now, so we'll see what happens next week.
We'll break down the next 5 transfer commitments next week when I join you guys, okay?
That's right. Very good. Aaron Torres. He is so if Eric Musselman is the coach transfer guru, I feel like AT is the media guru for transfers, because he's the one who's got collegebasketballtransfers.com if you just want to make sure you stay up to date on it. And he was one of the first that put on there about the newest Razorback basketball player, Stanley Umude. It is Umude. And actually look that pronunciation up on the South Dakota website. By the way, South Dakota basketball already has next year's roster up. They've moved on.
They're ready to rock and roll.
Yeah, they've moved on maybe quicker than anybody else, at least that I've seen. We're moving on to wrap up the first hour of halftime here from Swayze Field in Oxford, Arkansas Ole Miss later on tonight.